This is going to be a fairly informal kind of evening anyway, so if you get the urge for another cup of coffee, or if you need to take a potty break, head on out, and none of the speakers will take offense. And if we have to do it, we'll do the same. So I think most of you know me. I'm Bob Zylstra, and I'm currently the president of Historic Pella Trust. And it's really nice to have this meeting in person. I mean, last year we all spent time on Zoom and other kinds of high-tech stuff. Most of us learned more about it than we ever wanted to know. And maybe it was a healthy experience, I don't know, but I'm ready to get on with meeting real people and look people in the eye, and enough of looking at my computer screen. So it's really good that you could come out this evening. And what a great evening to come out. Isn't that a nice fall evening out there? Big moon up in the eastern sky, and feels like Iowa should in mid-November. So we're glad you came out with us this evening. So on behalf of the whole board, welcome. And I would like to introduce a few members of our board, along with our executive director. So this is Jennifer Van Coten up in front. She's our executive director. Dodie Bowden. Oh, there's Dodie Bowden back. So she's on our board. Dodie has been one of the long-serving members of our board. Glad to see you, Dodie. Bruce Borchi is up here. He's our secretary. Katie Douglas is here somewhere. Katie is the brave soul that remodeled the Rock House. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but she's also kind enough to join our board. Matt McCullough is back there. He's our vice president. You don't have to do the obligatory clap, but it's up to you guys. Dwayne Rempe. Did Dwayne make it tonight? Haven't seen Dwayne. Okay. Wayne Steenstra. Where's Wayne? Wayne's been on the board off and on for a long time too, so you want to know some of the history, you got to talk to some of the people that have been on the board for a while. So Wayne Steenstra. Ann Summit is here, and Ann recently joined our board. She's in back. You know, Ann doesn't know so much about the history of Historic Pella Trust, but she's got more family history in this town and more stories about what's going on in this town than probably any of us, so we're really glad to have Ann join the board. Lila Turnbull's on the board. Lila has certainly paid her dues in restoring old houses too. Lila, where are you? There you go in the back. Mary Van Wyck. Mary's on our board. She's in back there. You know, we've got a couple other. Bruce Hosteen is also on our board. He's inactive. He's dealing with some health issues, so he's inactive. And then Ron Rietveld is a board member emeritus, and so is Relty Arsma. So, thinking about comments for the evening, you know, this group has really donated a lot of time and energy and money on our cause. And really our cause is about trying to preserve some of these important old architectural legacies of town. The organization was formed after watching some really lovely old buildings that were really an integral part of Pella's history be torn down, you know, probably for good reason, maybe not for good reason, but they were torn down and they're lost. Once they're gone forever. So we really are really grateful to this group for some of what we've been able to do, along with help from local foundations, some just general contributors that you don't necessarily join membership, and then also some of the local companies have been very, very helpful. So this evening we're going to cover a few things in the program. I'm going to give a few comments on the Historic Preservation Commission. We'll talk a little bit about Pella's first by ordinance historic district. We'll talk about the Tuttle Learning Walk, conservation easements, and then because we're a 501c3, I'm obliged to give you at least something by way of an update on the organization's finance and give you a chance to ask questions about that, which we'll do. Then I'm going to turn it over to Bruce Borchi. He's going to give some awards this year. And then the good part about Bruce's presentation and Val Van Coten, who's our premier speaker for the night, you get lots of pictures. My part's the boring part where you just talk about words without any pictures. But pictures are coming, I promise. So we had a little bit of warm up in the background slides that were behind me until we dimmed the lights on them. But the program by Kent Vidcoat, and I think we're all looking forward to it. And then Jennifer's going to come up at the end and do some wrap up. So over the last several years, in fact, I've been with Historic Pella Trust now since 2011, I think it is. But we've used several methods trying to save some of these old buildings. And we've done lots of ways. Some of them we bought the building that looked like it was in danger of being torn down. Others we facilitated sort of a friendly purchase by somebody that would buy it and not tear it down. We also started using something called a preservation easement or a conservation easement. And that's a long-standing, it's a perpetual contract between Historic Pella Trust and a property owner, which prevents the current property owner from tearing it down or any future property owner from tearing it down without getting an explicit agreement from Historic Pella Trust. So we've been using those. But one thing about that you end up taking a house by house or building by building approach. And in 2012, we started working with the city of Pella to create something that could have a little broader impact. And so we lobbied with the city council and other people at the city to create it's Historic Preservation Commission. And one of the things that a Historic Preservation Commission can do, they can create these historic district overlays where you protect an entire district. So Historic Pella Trust was instrumental in getting that organization started. We started the lobbying efforts in late 2012. In 2014, the city of Pella created its own preservation commission. This preservation commission has 5 members right now. They meet monthly, so it's an official part of the city administrative function. 2 of our board members are on that. So both Bruce Borchi and Lila Turnbull are both on the Pella Historic Preservation Commission. Don Andre is also on that commission. He's here this evening. I saw him a little bit earlier. There he is. But they're empowered to do some things that really created a whole district, so they work with the neighborhood, and if there's a bunch of neighbors and they meet certain selection criteria, but they want to be a protected area, they can do that. And so this past year, they accomplished their first major project in creating what's the Collegiate Historic District. And so that's an area that runs roughly from Broadway to West First Street, from I think it's Union Street to Independence Street. And so it's one of that charming older neighborhood that's between downtown and Central College. So that was their first major project. So to me, that's one thing that was really a nice accomplishment. So all of a sudden, instead of doing house by house, Don, how many houses are in that district?
37.
How many?
37.
37. So with really sort of one protective agreement, you end up protecting 37. And how many of those are contributing structures? How many of them are really old structures we're trying to protect? You remember?
I think there's 4 that are non-contributing.
So over 30 of them that are good. So I think that deserves a round of applause for Don and Bruce and Riley. That was really a nice accomplishment. And it's also one I think the Historic Pella Trust took a lot of pride in helping sort of nurture that whole process so we can take that one forward. A few weeks ago, on September 25th, we held a ribbon cutting for another one of Historic Pella Trust's big projects, and that was the Tuttle Learning Walk. Several years ago, there was a vision created that's how to take advantage of, we own the little historic log cabin on Lincoln Street. There was an old abandoned alleyway just to the west side. How do we take that and turn that into a feature that might be interesting and useful for the city of Pella? And this idea came up of making a little meandering walk through there that would have information signs along it that would capture important capsules of Pella's history. So we laid it out. It seemed like a pretty easy, straightforward project. We had an architect that worked with us. And the next thing you know, it got more complicated. We had to meet engineering standards from the city, and all of a sudden the price tag went up. Next thing you know, we were looking at, for our little organization, a $200,000 project. Now, for some of you, I know that's not a big project. But for our little organization, that felt like swallowing a whale. But it seemed like a good idea. So we got agreement from the city council. If we could raise the money, they would do it. We started visiting people like you. We visited local foundation. Jennifer did a wonderful job of soliciting money through local foundations. Several local manufacturers helped us, banks helped us. Amazing number of people. So all of a sudden we were able to raise the money. We got the project built. It's a gorgeous project. So on September 25th, we had our ribbon cutting and we turned it over to the city. So the ongoing maintenance of it will become a city responsibility. But for the city, they got a very nice feature with no taxpayer dollars involved. And the city, they like those kind of deals. And as a taxpayer, I kind of appreciate that. But it was your contributions and your efforts, along with a lot of others, that really helped make that possible. So thank you for that. At the same time, we haven't given up on conservation easements. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on some of the houses and buildings around that have conservation easements or that we own. The one I've already touched on, and that's the Rock House. The Rock House is that nice little rock house out by the water plant on University, just as it leaves town. Katie Douglas bought that, brave Katie, and she's been working on it since then. And Katie, I think it's on the Christmas tour of homes. So if you would like to see the results of all that work, and the inside, I've been there many times, compared to what it literally is a situation, she started with a pig's ear, and it's a very nice silk purse. You could wear it with an old analogy. But it's just gorgeous on the inside, and any of you that stop in and go through it say, I really wish I had done that. So it's a gorgeous thing, so thank you to Katie. I know her mom and dad helped a little bit here and there, so thank you to all of it. It's a great success story. Where we put a conservation easement on it, and Katie and her family are willing to build it up into a really nice facility. Another project that we're really happy with is on the old Soul Sleeper Church. That's the old church building that holds Pella Books. But about 2 years ago, DJ and Debbie DeYoung started talking to Alfred about taking over that business. I think it was about 2 years ago, wasn't it, DJ?
Yep, about.
Give us a wave so we know what we're talking about, Debbie and DJ. But they took over that. So not only did they take over the business, all of a sudden they started caring and taking care of the building. And so all of a sudden where you had, and Alfred, bless his heart, was a wonderful tenant, had been there a long time, knew a lot about books. But Alfred's way of inventory management was just pile it higher and deeper, and you could make it through most of the aisleways there, but some of them you had to go and start somewhere else to get to the back. But DJ and Debbie have now made it's an inviting place to go in. It's fun, all of a sudden the floors look nice, they look fitting for an old building. The books are organized, and it's just sort of a nice place to go in and browse and read, and the chairs are ready, right? So they've got that. So I'm eager to see what they have planned next for that. So thanks again for coming out, and thanks for all the work you guys have done that. We also, a couple of years ago, there was a cute little house across from Nick's greenhouse on Oskaloosa Street. It's got a great history. It was built with pellet brick and drain tile bricks, built as a spec house by Herman Rietveld. That house became endangered until we bought it. And then we sold it to an interesting couple. They happen to be living in Ireland. So they bought the house. I don't think they've ever seen it. They're Edwin and Joy Mitchell. And I don't think they've been here since they bought the house. They have a daughter that lives here and son-in-law. So they bought the house with the idea of coming in here, restoring it, and I think moving back and forth between here and Ireland. But with this pandemic, they haven't been able to come here. So their hope is, they just sent Jennifer a letter a couple of weeks ago. They hope to be here early next year so that they can start arranging to do the renovation on that house. But in the course of that transaction, again, we put a conservation easement on it. So that is one of those special little houses, special part of Pella history that's now protected going forward. Another one that we put a conservation easement on, there's a little blacksmith shop just off the northeast corner of West Market Park. Been owned by Bobby Klein and his father for many years. It's at 914 Franklin Street. But in the course of that, selling it to Sean Thomas, we were able to get a conservation easement put on that. And Sean and his son Austin are busy restoring it. And it's starting to look like it's a really nice place. It might even start competing with like the Rock House. For American White did a really nice job at 1110 Washington restoring another old house. It was an 1850s house. Is that Maria's Cottage? Is that the name you have on now, Mary? Okay. So anyway, that's another one where if you've got family coming to town, they can arrange to rent that. Is Airbnb that you got it through, or VRBO? Airbnb. So anyway, this one, Sean Thomas and his son Austin, they are doing that at the same time. By the way, they restore old cars professionally. So Sean's done some of that, but they're in the process of fixing up that. By next summer, I'm expecting it's going to be complete. I think Sean originally thought he would have it done by the end of this year, and I don't think he's going to make that schedule, but he is very good at it, and it's going to be very nice. He also is eager to get an opportunity to show it off, and it's going to compare very nicely with those other two properties. So again, this is a property where there's a conservation easement on it. Somebody bought it that knows how to deal with taking care of an old house and putting it into good modern use. So it's another one that we feel really good about, where we saved an 1850s era house in Pella. They spoke Dutch when they built it. They spoke Dutch when they lived in it, probably for the first 75 years of its life. So it's an important part of our heritage. And this year we did add one new, it's an 1880s era house on Oskaloosa Street at 817 Oskaloosa. So it's a nice old brick house on the southwest side of town. So that's a little bit of work on our conservation easement and our work that we really do to try to protect these important older buildings in town. I'm going to shift gears a little bit on our financial report. For the year 2020, which is the last year that we finished up on, our gross income for the year was $76,000. Our expenditures were $135,000, which exceeded our income by about $58,000. Most of that was money that we were spending on the Tuttle Learning Walk. So we obviously overspent by quite a bit. At the end of the year, though, we still had no debt, and we had $200,000 in assets. So the course of this year, we've completed all of the spending now is complete on the Tuttle Learning Walk. Our cash balance at the end of this year, or right now I should say, is about $120,000. So that's sort of the summary where we're at financially, sort of an overview of the things we've been working on. So at this point, I'll take some questions. Otherwise, we're going to hand it off to Bruce Borchie for awards. So any questions out there, either on the financials or anything else that Historic Pella Trust has been doing?